Shut up. This is the last unit in immunology. We've almost done it. We've almost learned all there is to know about the immune system. Just kidding. We're just actually learning a small portion, but it's all we need to know. So we're going to end by talking about hypersensitivity reactions, which we basically kind of think of this as allergic reactions. So what are the different types? So hypersensitivity can be defined as a normal, so it's supposed to happen, but exaggerated or uncontrolled immune response. Okay. And it's a response to the antigen that can cause inflammation, cell destruction, or injury. And then we classify it on the basis of how much time after exposure, especially when we get into, I think it's type 3 hypersensitivity reactions that we have our delayed, nope, it's type 4, our delayed hypersensitivity reactions. So those happen later after 24 hours after exposure, where our kind of more acute reactions are within 24 hours. Okay, so first let's look at some terms. The first one is immediate hypersensitivity. And then as you can guess, that happens right away. It's an acute allergic reaction. It's caused by molecules released by mast cells when it interacts with our membrane-bound IgG. So it's antibody mediated. It's our not IgG, it's our IgE, okay? And the molecules that are released are like histamines, which we'll talk about those down here in a bit. But then if you just remember, we have our mast cells, or I may not have talked about this. Here's our mast cell, and IgE antibody just tools around on it. That's where it lives, okay? And it actually binds to the Fc portion, so it would be more, whoops, it's more like this. So it's just bound over here. Okay. The next one is delayed hypersensitivity. And that's cell mediated. So we're bringing in our T cells, our CD4 positive cells. You can notice that there's a kind of a common theme here, our CD4 cells. And our antigen presenting cells activate our T cells. So macrophages, dendrites, or dendritic cells. Then we have immunization. Or sensitization. And this is the reaction dependent on the host's response to subsequent exposure to the antigen. But you may hear it called immunization or sensitization. And really, it's like I've been exposed to the antigen the first time, whatever that could be. So I've been immunized to it if I formed antibodies against it. So immunized to it or sensitized to it if I now have antibodies against whatever that antigen may be. The next couple are kind of the same. We have allergen, which is an antigen that triggers an allergic reaction. Allergic reaction then is an unusual reaction that occurs with subsequent exposure. So we had to have been exposed before. An allergy is just that altered reaction to an external substance. So you can use allergic reaction and allergy kind of interchangeably. This is the new one, atopy. I'm not quite sure how you say it. This is an immediate hypersensitivity reaction. Well, that seems like it's in the wrong spot, but it is. And it's mediated by our IgE, which we talk a lot about this unit. And then it produces exposure to the skin, nose, or airway to an allergen producing allergen-specific IgE antibodies. I don't know what that sentence is supposed to mean. Anyways, what this one is this one you have a genetic predisposition to having an allergy, a tendency to develop allergic diseases. Okay. Oh, exposure of the skin. Sorry, I was reading that wrong. So if we have that allergen up here get into our skin, on our skin, to our nose or airway, then we're going to produce these allergen-specific IgE antibodies. I don't know why that was so hard for me. My brain just could not get around it. Okay, the next one is anaphylaxis. And this is probably what a lot of us think about when we think about severe allergic reactions. It's life-threatening. Our airway will start to constrict due to bronchoconstriction, and it could end up being fatal. There are other signs and symptoms besides just that bronchoconstriction, which we'll talk about. And then the last term is vasodilation. And this is, again, that narrowing or constricting of the blood vessels. So normally, like if you have your little blood vessel this big, if an allergic reaction happens, a severe one, then it could become this big. And so like if this is an airway in the lungs or vessels that provide blood to the lungs that carries our oxygen, like up here, it's a lot easier to go through. Well, down here, it's so tight of a space that they get stuck and then we can't carry it. So that's where a lot of the problems come from. All right, let's get into the nuts and bolts here. So we're going to talk about 4 types of hypersensitivity reactions, and we're back to Roman numerals. So type 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're listed there, and so let's get into it. And there's a little bumblebee because our type 1 hypersensitive reactions can be due to insects. Okay, so the first one, the type 1, is an anaphylactic reaction. And this is, like we said, it's that kind of critical, severe response. But it's a clinical response to immunologic formation and fixation between a specific antigen and a tissue-fixing antibody. It's usually mediated by IgE antibodies, and it occurs in the following 3 stages. So what first has to happen is we have to, so I guess before this stage, there's like a pre-stage that happens here. Before 1 is we've been exposed. So if we want to say that our antigen in this case is our little bee venom, maybe we got bit by a bee years ago. Okay, so we've been exposed to this antigen, something in that bee venom. Is it venom? I'm guessing it's venom. I don't know. Our body did not like, so we formed IgE antibodies against the bee venom antigen. So now we have these antibodies that we formed just tooling around and riding on our mast cells. They're not doing anything. They're just, I don't know why my mast cell looks like my dead cell. There we go. They're just hanging out on there, okay? So that's going on before these stages. So now I have this kind of resting, I guess, I don't know, combination of IgE on my mast cells. I get stung by a bee again. So then my bee venom antigen is in my body again, and it attaches to the IgE that's already fixed to the surface of my mast cell. So I'm going to draw this a little cleaner. So here's my mast cell that already has my IgE in it or on it. And then my little bee venom antigen comes along and it combines on this little FC portion. It combines to that IgE. And then we get, it says cross-linking of 2 IgE molecules is necessary. So we're going to need like another mast cell with more IgE and then binding together. Somewhere there's an antibody. Okay. So the antigen binds to the IgE already on my mast cells. The mast cells then and basophils then release various mediators, and we'll talk about what those are here in a little bit. And then the effects of the mediators released produce vascular changes, and then also has effects on some of our other blood cells and the coagulation cascade. So there you go. That's what's happening in our type 1 anaphylactic reaction. Several drugs or several agents can cause anaphylactic reactions. Certain drugs are one of them. Insect stings. I think penicillin is a pretty big one. Don't quote me on that, but I'm going to write it down, so I guess you can. My husband and son have a penicillin allergy. We knew my husband did. The first time my son got penicillin, he started getting a rash on his back. So that's crazy. And then certain food reactions. So if you hear of people with peanut reactions, this is a type 1 hypersensitivity reaction. Here's a little bit more about the etiology. So this kind of has to do a little bit when we talk about our mast cells up here and what's happening. So here's a nice little diagram of the mast cells. They're common throughout the body. Remember, there are tissue basophils, and they're receptors for IgE. He told you I was doing it wrong. So we have our little IgE antibody on here, and they're just riding along on our mast cells. And then the granules of the mast cells, like once we've seen this antigen again and it's been activated, they degranulate, so they release their granules. And then that's where we get our symptoms of our reaction. Their granules contain heparin, histamine, and zinc. And just as a FYI, you don't have to know this, but I guess I'm going to put it down. There's a 6-to-1 ratio of heparin to histamine. You don't have to know that. Okay. And then because of all of this, we have our acute allergic reactions that end up happening. This is basically kind of repeating up there, but like it's like our immune system all of a sudden has been turned on. Okay. So a little bit more, our histamine, our leukotriene 4, which we'll talk about what a leukotriene is in a second, interleukin 4 and interleukin 13 are major mediators of allergy and asthma. So they all play a role in giving us our signs and our symptoms. And then all are formed by basophils and then released in large quantities after stimulation with interleukin 3. Okay, so let's talk about these, some of these that we mentioned that are released. So histamine is probably the biggest one. This is what we think about a lot. I forgot to add up here, so we're going to add a bullet. It causes vasodilation, which we mentioned before. It's where our blood vessels get, ooh, that's not it. Oh, did I say that wrong? You guys, I said this wrong. This should be vasoconstriction. Sorry. Vasoconstriction is here, is when our blood vessels go from big to little. Vasodilation is when it goes from big to bigger. So then we get more blood flow. That's so bad that I did that. Sorry. Sorry. So it causes vasodilation, so it opens up those blood vessels. It also increases vascular permeability, and then it promotes concentration or contraction of smooth muscle, so those muscles that we can't control. And then the contraction of the smooth muscle leads to all these, which is constriction of the bronchial smooth muscle. So, like the smooth muscle in our lungs. And then we get edema of the trachea and larynx because we have increased blood flow. We're going to get swelling of our windpipe, right? So it's going to make it hard to breathe. And then stimulation of smooth muscle in the GI tract. Sometimes a symptom of an anaphylactic reaction is vomiting or diarrhea. Ugh, Diarrhea. Okay. Other things we can get due to the stimulation is we can get the runny nose and then sneezing too. One more thing here, histamine also stimulates itching. I just want to make that clear. Sorry, vasodilation makes them bigger, vasoconstriction makes them smaller. Okay, sorry. Our leukotrienes we mentioned, we don't have to know much about these, just that it alters our bronchial, so in our lungs, smooth muscle and enhances the effects of histamine on target organs, which is actually a bad thing. So it enhances all these things. Interleukin-4 and interleukin-13 promote class switching of B cells to produce IgE antibodies. So that's telling it, hey, stop producing your IgMs and IgGs and produce some IgEs here. Helps maintain and amplify the T helper cell response, T helper type 2 T helper cell response. And then that one, which part of that response is releasing cytokines, right? Promotes recruitment of eosinophils and other inflammatory cells, and then contributes to the production of mucus. So that's everything that that does. Okay, let's pause here, and then I will come back with our anaphylactic topic, and then we'll get into some more specific signs and symptoms.